Hello and welcome to the virtual edition of our year-round screening series, Film Independent Presents, and to this Q&A for the new Lionsgate film, The Courier, directed by Dominic Cooke. I'm Jen Wilson, Senior Programmer with Film Independent. Thank you to our lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and our screening partner, Vision Media. And now please welcome today's moderator, the Film Awards editor for Variety, Clayton Davis.
Thank you, Jen. And hello, everyone out there. I'm joined today with the director, Dominic Cooke of The Courier, and Tom O'Connor, writer of The Courier. It's good to meet you both.
Good to meet you. Be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you know, it's how I would start. How's everyone doing? Like, we've been inside for like 15 months or something. I always like to check in on everybody.
Well, as a screenwriter, it's been basically the same. Nothing's really changed. So I'm fine. I heard there was a pandemic, but I don't know anything about
it. Yeah. Dominic?
It's okay. I mean, listen, it's not so bad for me. Things could be much worse. They are worse for a lot of other people. The only thing I find profoundly frustrating is starting lots of things that never seem to actually come to fruition. I'm doing a lot of starting and moving of things. Yeah. And you realize how important in life it is to sort of complete. It's the thing of closure, isn't it? We all need to sort of, even small things, they sort of need to be finished, or you have this sort of anxiety hanging over you. So yeah, that's the main frustration. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so listen, first of all, congratulations on a good movie. And it's always good to like say that, like, congratulations on making a good movie. People seem to enjoy. It's a good time. I have to start with you, Dominic, here. You know, you've done theater, you know, TV, film, like you just want to take over every aspect of entertainment at this point. But why The Courier at this point in your career? Why now?
It was a totally intuitive response to Tom's script. My background in theatre tends to be with sort of living writers and on scripts, and I've learned over the years that, I mean, some people are able to, I mean, I can articulate it more now, but some people make sort of very reasoned decisions, and I was sort of just totally taken with the quality of the writing, a story I didn't know about, the idea of a sort of regular person suddenly becoming involved in potentially the end of the world seemed to me to be a rather extraordinary thing. And in the end, it's the sort of the heart of it, I think, that got me, because I like to do things that have some sort of emotional heart. And with espionage movies, they often leave me cold. It's not that I don't sort of admire them, and there are many that are quite brilliant, but you don't tend to be moved by them. And I thought it was really interesting to have a movie where one does feel and care for the characters, and there's a sort of a warmth there. So yeah, it was all that.
Yeah, it took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say that to Tom. Espionage movies don't tend to be my forte a lot of the time, because they seem to, you know, I think, Dominic, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think, you know, they lack emotion, but sometimes they just feel they could be kind of dry in just how they deliver the material, because a lot of times it's just over our pay grade kind of internal stuff that we don't understand. But this is really, really engaging, kind of chicken before the egg. You know, Dominic comes, you know, a director taken by your script. Why did you choose to write about this?
I did not know the story before. I was just reading history books. I'd gotten interested in sort of the history of Russian and American espionage over the years. And Penkovsky is a sort of legendary figure in the history of spying between East and West. And there's one line in one book that said his contact was a British civilian, Greville Wynne. And I thought, wait, I'm sorry, what? And so I started looking it up, and I just was immediately taken by the imagination of the story. Like, this guy who was just a salesman got pulled into this enormous geopolitical spy. I was like, this must already be a movie. Someone's already done this, surely. And then I realized no one had done it. I was like, I was taken for just as, by just both as sort of as a movie, but also just the imagining, putting myself in the shoes of that character. It's like, just that any of us could be put in that role. How would we do? And that just seemed like a very compelling, dramatic proposition. So that's how it came about.
I think looking at follow-up question to you is, you know, I'll use myself here. I'll do some self-deprecation here. I'm a stupid American. I don't know British history a lot of the time. So I know anything British, I say international history. I just like get to have a disconnect. Yeah. So bringing that now to the forefront, was there any worry that, you know, if American audience would find this as engaging as any other biographical figure in history that we tend to know just off the cuff in our education system?
That's a great question. And I think what I thought is that the character, Benedict's character is universal. And it's because it's a movie that it's a spy movie, but it's a movie about male friendship. It's a movie about an ordinary person put into an extraordinary situation. I just felt like those things would go over any international boundaries. And I also felt like Wynn's character is also a very typical American kind of character, that sort of salesman who has to sort of dance all day long, sort of Willy Loman kind of character. Something that I think an American audience could recognize instantly. He's not purely just a British character.
Oh, absolutely. Cool. So, all right. So, Dominic, you get the script in your hand. You're gonna make this movie. Let's talk about this cast for a minute. I'm gonna go from worst to best. So I'm gonna start with Benedict Cumberbatch, since he isn't here today and he didn't want to hang out with us. Very upset with him right now. How do we get our hands on Benedict Cumberbatch playing this role? What did you do wrong?
Well, it was easier to get him to do the movie than it was to get him to do this. So that's saying something. But no, we'd worked together. We knew each other well. We were sort of pals, and we'd done two. Well, actually, I directed a play with him. I produced a play with him way back in the day, and then I did a Richard III on television with him. And I was always sort of thinking in the back of my mind that I wanted to work with him again and trying to find something that would be right. And so, it didn't take me long into sort of reading this to think that he would be the right person. And then, I spoke to producers and got properly on board, and we went straight to him. I think I sent him a text and said, "Can I send you a script?"
I was like, "Hey, what are you doing? You want to get it going?"
Yeah. So yeah. And then I just went round to see him, and at the time, and he was into the script, really into the script, but he had a lot going on at that time, and we were sort of lucky that quite a lot of that fell away, and very quickly it all sort of happened really quickly. We were there, we were doing it.
Tom, as a writer, there's visions of the film in your head, obviously, as you're writing it. Was Benedict just like the obvious selection when he got cast, or did you have any other ideas of what Greville would look like, today in a today person?
Yeah, no, I try not to write with actors in mind, just because it messes up the process. But Benedict is always, the whole writing process is like, all right, don't get fixated on Benedict Cumberbatch. He's perfect, but just don't, and then because he'll never do it, but he did it. And then so it was, it's weird. He was actually the exact same age as Greville was in real life at the events of the movie, and there is a fair amount of physical resemblance. Obviously Benedict did some work in terms of how he, costume design, but yeah, it was I'm a brilliant actor, and obviously Dominic and he had worked together before. It just felt like a natural fit, and I was thrilled that it worked out.
Yeah, same age, not always a given in biopics. So thank you for matching that up accordingly, because sometimes we have some differences that we can discuss. Let's talk about Rachel Brosnahan and Jessie Buckley, tied for best ever. But they're portrayals as Emily Donovan and Sheila Wynn. Jessie Buckley plays Greville's wife, and Jessie Buckley especially, has that that's, I won't say the suffering wife, but that ache of a wife that's like worried for the safety, but can find the important thing. Just, it's so much layers to that. Did she come up with a lot of that herself? Was that through your direction, Dominic, or was that already embedded within the writing of Tom's script?
It was all me, of course. No, listen, quite the opposite. She is quite something. She's so much younger than the character. They're talking of age things. And she didn't feel like she was, because she completely transformed. And that woman is so far from who Jessie really is. I can't, right at the opposite end of a sort of personality type, sort of energy and frequency, totally different. And I think also for someone of my age, I sort of remember, I was born a few years after the movie is set, but I do remember that generation of British women, sort of middle-class British women, very contained, very sort of stoic and uptight. They'd all grown up through the war and all of that, and then they already had this British reserve. And she isn't British, she's Irish, and she's Jessie, and she's very sort of open. But she just found it. It was amazing. I sort of nudged her, but she absolutely got who that woman was. And I sort of think that if you're casting repressed characters, and let's face it, a lot of British characters are, you need actors who can have the vulnerability underneath. They've got to feel things very deeply. If you just play that mask, there's sort of nothing there, it's dead. And all of them had that. And even Americans, of course, at that time, who are much more expressive generally than Brits, I mean, I'm generalizing, but you know what I mean. They were still more formal and sort of formal than they would be now. And Rachel, again, she just totally sort of got that world and that sort of time period and that feeling. Absolutely. So, you know, when you're working with people as good as that, your job as a director is a sort of assistant, really. You're just sort of maybe over here a bit, maybe over there. And we did quite a lot of rehearsal where we set out the sort of backstory and the foundations of the character. We didn't do a lot of actual rehearsing, but we did all the sort of background work. So everyone understands basically what the scenes are about. Everyone's sort of plugged into the history of the characters and the key things of the relationships. Of course, they're based on real people. So we looked at what bits of the real biography were useful. And I think for me, that really helps because the film set is so pressurized, you're working so quickly, you sort of, they need to have that in their bones before they come on, and then you can play a bit on set, which I like to do.
I was gonna ask, how long was the shoot, front to back?
I think it was 6 weeks.
Oh, 6 weeks.
Yeah, which was quite good.
How long ago did you, because this, by the way, I've heard that this movie was coming out for like a year and a half and then finally made its way out because the pesky pandemic came in the way. But like, how long ago did you guys wrap?
We wrapped in Prague in December 2018.
Oh. So poor Tom O'Connor's just sitting here waiting for his movie to come out, and just like, oh my god, it must be torture.
Well, you know, it was funny actually. We were very fortunate that the Sundance premiere was January 2020, and so we all got to see it in a packed theater with a live crowd. It was a wonderful experience. Dominic and I were there. We also saw the screening in Salt Lake City, which is just a purely civilian screening and not industry people, and that was really wonderful to be there for that. We didn't realize that the world was about to end, but we're going to hate us. But we got that. We feel fortunate that way. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great seeing it there. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, in that crowd, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tom, talking about when you start constructing the script. You know, Greville died in February 1990. When I guess how aware, you said you weren't aware of the story, so did you contact anyone from families or any family that you could contact that you know, try to, you know, put this together, or were you just kind of operating from the historical standpoint?
I think when it was just me by myself, I was just writing on my own. Since everyone had all the main characters had all passed away quite a long time ago, there wasn't a need to sort of get anyone's life rights, and so I was just working off the historical record and everything that I could find research-wise. I believe once we got involved, I know there was some outreach to Wynn's. Dominic, you could probably speak to that, to Wynn's son.
Yeah, we tried to find his son. We couldn't find him anywhere. I mean, I don't know if he's still alive, or I would guess he was, but I don't know. Yeah, so we did, you know, I was really hoping that we would find him. I don't know what happened to Sheila, but yeah, we couldn't find them anywhere. And we did all the sort of electoral roll stuff and really looking in detail. So I have no idea what happened. But I was contacted recently by a friend of his, which was really interesting.
Oh, really?
The film came out, yeah.
Awesome.
Someone who'd worked with him in Belgrade because he was traveling to other Eastern Bloc countries before he went to the Soviet Union. And that was very touching, actually, her description of him. And yeah, it was nice to hear from someone who had a personal relationship.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, great. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty, obviously, of you know, everything that the film offers in terms of how the arc of what we see of him. What was the most difficult thing for you to write, Tom, and then Dominic for you to direct, scene wise?
I think for me to write, I think it was probably the hardest part. Was something that Dominic and I worked on a lot. I mean, it's all writing is hard, but the prison sequence is something that Dominic really wanted to. We pushed to sort of explore the depths of that, and it was hard for me. That was difficult for me to get there, to sort of inhabit that. I can't imagine how hard it was for Benedict and Dominic to do it, but that was something that was a lot of exploration, a lot of challenge. And I think also just sort of in general, as an American writing characters that aren't American, there's a little bit of just trying to make sure you're honoring the spirit of the characters versus just writing a cliche of what you think an English person is like. So.
Yeah. Good. Dominic?
Well, there were two, but the probably unlikely ones. The hardest scene to direct was actually the scene where Emily goes into the office of MI6 right at the beginning.
Really?
Yeah, it was really, really hard because it's quite expositional. I mean, it's that scene in the movie where the things are laid out. And also there are a lot of sort of dynamics going on in that scene that are really interesting, and I didn't want to sort of miss them. You know, the sort of patronizing attitude the British, A, to an American, and B, to a woman.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of get all of that in there whilst at the same time getting all, and it was really surprisingly hard. I mean, strangely, the sort of the prison and the sort of higher emotional scenes were sort of took care of themselves because the actors were great and they went there, and you know, we were just sort of building on what they brought. But that one, and then the other one was a scene without words that took endless takes, because I don't know if you remember it. There's a scene where Benedict puts a microfilm into in a toilet, and he puts a microfilm into a sort of cleaning product, and then a guy comes in, picks it up, and puts it in his briefcase. Well, this poor guy was actually a supporting artist, an extra, and he fell to pieces. You know that thing where people go into total panic and they can't actually hear anything?
Yeah. It was just like you just couldn't. Oh my
And
God.
it was, I really felt, I mean, you know, extras, you get a variety of people. Sometimes they are actually really quite good actors who sort of work, or they're just very talented. And sometimes they're just like people off the street who look right. And this guy wasn't an actor. And the timing of it was remarkably precise. And it was like, no, you turn the tap on, then you reach down and pick the thing up, then you open your case. And it took 25 takes.
Oh my God.
And we had like loads of really important things to do, but it had to be right because it's actually a time important.
I can't wait for the director's cut of this now. That whole sequence is gonna be like 4 hours long.
Yeah, very long. Yeah.
Release the Dominic Cook cut. That's what we're gonna start the hashtag.
That's good.
You can never tell. Sometimes it's the things you look at your schedule for the day and you think, oh well, actually, yeah, this is okay. I can handle this. And then something happens and you are like, you know, not really able to cope. Yeah.
But by the way, that's a great shout out to your editor, Gareth C. Seals. You know, probably for that first, not for that scene with the toilet, the first one you spoke about,
Filtering all those takes. Yeah.
That sequence is pretty impactful, and it's cut very well. Also, by the way, we have to talk about, just revere him, Sean Bobbitt, cinematographer. I mean, like, he is one of my favorite in the game, and the way he lights scenes, the way he captures it. When you were, you know, shooting it, how did that like dynamic work in terms of working with him and then being able to capture those key moments that you speak of that are so important, that it's important for the viewer to see, and giving it a different perspective?
Well, he and I had done what we did. He did my previous film. So when I came back to do this, we were sort of already knew that we worked well together, and we basically shared the same view, which is that a lot of contemporary film is sort of made with, you know, a lot of different coverage, and we didn't really want to work. He doesn't really believe in coverage, and nor do I. I just think you've got to sort of decide what your shots are, and sometimes you only need one, you know. And so we had this sort of principle that every setup we would do, every scene we would do the minimum number of setups, and that would make us think very carefully about where the camera is, if it moved, where it moved to. And because we had that sort of shared understanding, shared idea, and we managed to get a lot of prep in, which is so important to really work through all the scenes in detail. And we did a hell of a lot of traveling together because we were recceing all around Eastern Europe and a lot of places in London. We were sort of match fit, so it was a really joyful experience. Actually, it was brilliant, and he's got a sort of mix of, you know, coming to the set with very strong ideas, but also being open to what happens and going, actually, why don't we go here, or why don't we do this? And so we would both offer things in that regard to sort of shift things from where we'd originally thought they were going to be. So no, it was a really good experience. Yeah, I learned a lot from working with him. Awesome.
I want to talk about one of the key moments towards the end, obviously, and it's the execution of Colonel Oleg, and which has a good emotional like punch in the moment. Can you talk about constructing that scene and how you wanted it to land, and did you end up getting it the way you intended? For both
You mean
from
the scene between the two guys in prison? That scene,
Correct.
yeah.
Mm.
Do you want to talk about that, Tom? Because we made some changes to that, didn't we, as we went along? I seem to remember.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, it was.
I think I think what we did was we put the information in to the scene, didn't we? That wasn't originally there. The information about him having saved them from the Cuban.
I think
missile
we
crisis.
did that. I think we
Put
did
it in
that.
that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It was because it was the emotional reunion of the men, but also I think, and that was something that Dominic brought to it, was the idea that it sort of gave purpose to Oleg's life and his death. That he knew he was going to die, but to know that he had died for a reason, for a purpose, added a lot of power to that scene, and that Greville was able to give him that gift as sort of a final parting gift. Important.
Yeah, I think because we sort of knew, obviously, I mean, the end of the story is pretty devastating. This extraordinary guy died, and another one had an appalling experience, traumatic experience in prison. But I suppose we really wanted the audience to feel that they had done something that was so extraordinary that their lives were not lived in vain. And that, I think, is really important in sort of the meaning of what one's life is. And I think audiences respect that and feel it, that although there's a sadness at the end, they sort of feel that they did something great in their lives, and they did.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next question, is that I feel like we as of late, I would say as of late, maybe the last 10 or 15 years, we've been seeing a lot of films explore these unsung heroes that Americans, UK, doesn't matter, anywhere, like we're so impactful and have such a part of our history and why we have the freedoms that we do. We're starting to learn about them now, and it seems to be a really large hunger and appetite for those unsung heroes. Do you find yourselves attracted to those stories now to try to get those stories told that people don't know? Because, like, again, some American here didn't really know about Oleg, didn't know about Greville either. But I'm so glad I do now, because now it gave me interest to seek more information.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I guess I'm a little bit like Dominic in that sense that it's sort of intuitive. I mean, you come across a story, whether it's an idea of your own or something you stumble across in history, and if it grabs you, it grabs you. I think a great unsung hero story is always attractive because no one's done it before. no one's sung the hero, so you get to do it.
Yeah, and you feel, I think there's something in the there's some sort of, it gives you an extra sense of purpose in what you're doing. I mean, I always want what I do to have some sort of meaning beyond itself. You know, it's making people think about something in a different way. It might have a sort of political ambition, or it might be, in this instance, you know, sort of, we are doing something valuable, I think, by telling that story. So I think actually what's often the untold stories are stories that were untold because people were in minority groups that have been represented through history. And I do think there's a really interesting thing that is happening and will continue to happen, which is also sort of dramatizing fictional stories in the past, where you can look at things from perspectives that they just weren't looked at. There's so much untapped potential in that area. And I think it's a really, really interesting area, because we are the way we are because of the past we have. And if we understand the past differently, it changes who we are in the present. So I'm sort of really interested in that. I think it's a great thing to do, and I'm excited by the way I'm seeing quite a lot of that happen around, you know, on TV and film at the moment.
Interesting. I have a question that it came to mind earlier, and then I wanted to ask you, and I guess this becomes maybe a two-part. Tom, did you ever envision this? Because there's so much information that I feel like we could still, I mean, you could probably do a whole limited series about this subject. And Dominic, did you think about doing, like, maybe this would be better as a long, like, we could spend more time, build to certain moments? Was that ever considered, or you always knew this was cinematic under 2 hours?
I think for me it was always a movie, and I think one of the great things about working with Dominic was Dominic really brought a sense of really narrowing down the focus, because I did all this historical research, and a part of the thing was that what do we really need? What does the audience really need to know? What we care about these characters, we care about the story. We don't necessarily need to know that every single geopolitical machination. And so stripping that down to focus on the characters is really part of the, I think shorter can be better. Sometimes longer can be indulgent. That's my thought. Dominic,
I think there are, I mean, we did find, but this has happened to me on a number of occasions, you know, when you do something historical, you then discover there's a whole load of other fascinating stories that are sort of adjunct to this story. So, you know, there are 2 or 3 other really interesting stories about characters that we weren't able to include, or other sort of dimensions to sort of the sequel, What Happened to Gravel When He Came Home, which is, you know, another whole extraordinary tale. So, you know, you do find other stuff, but I think when I read it, it did feel very much like a complete movie about one sort of action, which was this the all around the Cuban Missile Crisis and their sort of intervention in that.
Is that you admitting that we're getting the Courier Part 2? Like, I need to read into these moments appropriately.
We did joke that the sequel would be Greville going back to Moscow and killing all the people who had tortured him. And
yeah, make it a revenge thriller. This would be amazing.
Oh,
Why are we saying it like this isn't a good idea? Like, we can greenlight this right now, this second, and get it going. My God. Oh. One last question, which is always it's the most difficult one I ask a lot of people, especially the people behind the scenes. I feel every great artist leaves a piece of themselves in their art. Whether they're directing, writing, acting, there's a piece of you that you leave in your gift to the world. And it could be like something that you're letting go from your past, or just something that you feel like really is the point of your art, that the scene that makes the most sense. What is that for you two in the film? What is something that we see that's like, that's Dominic, that's Tom?
That's such a hard one.
I'm
gonna say I think it. I can't say why. I can't sort of say, oh, this is like the bit of my life when this happened. But I think the scene where Penkovsky comes back and finds the soldiers and the KGB in his apartment, and then they take his child away. Sorry, they take him away, and the child and the mother are there. It's not that, fortunately, that has never happened to me. I hope it never will. But there's something about the sort of intensity of that I'm really proud of, I would say. I'm really, really proud of it, because I sort of did, the actors were there, but I sort of pushed and pushed to get them into a place that felt very real, in terms of, well, what happens if the person you love most in the world is separated from you forever. I think they both know that both, and she's amazing, the actress Maria who played his wife, they both know, because they know the society they're living in, that's it. As soon as he comes in, he knows that's it. He knows he's going to die. He knows he's never going to see his family again. And there's such power in that, in the writing as well, but in the way that they played it, I thought it was amazing.
Thank you. Tom?
It's a great question. I think for me, it's probably the scene when they're at lunch, when they recruit Wynn to be an agent for them, to work for them, for MI6. When he says to him, he's like, "I'm just a salesman." And I think that's how I think almost all of us feel about our lives. I think very few of us are so superbly gifted or special or anything that we feel a sense of destiny about our lives. And I think we're all just kind of doing the best we can to get through the day. And there was a sense of, I can't do this. I'm not worthy of this. I'm not worthy of the thing you're asking me to do. And it turned out that he was, but it took him a long time to sort of find out that was true. And I think it's something that we all struggle with, is sort of, it's the great mass of men leading lives of quiet desperation. And I think Wynn was very much leading a life of quiet desperation, and would have had the circumstance not occurred to him. And I think it's something that, the lack of specialness about all of us is sort of something that's very, very common feeling humanity. We don't feel special, but we don't know yet. And I think that's something
I like that. You actually made me think to myself. I was like, am I special yet? I don't know. We're also reflecting on this. Yeah. Listen, I've loved hanging out with both of you. Again, congratulations on a great film. Apologies for having to work with Benedict Cumberbatch, but other than that, it was all great. He's fantastic. No, everything about the film is great, and I hope everyone watching tells more people to go and search and seek this out and watch it, because it's special in a year that's kind of halfway over already. Yeah.
How did that happen?
And only an eternity to go. But thank you, Film Independent, for this conversation today, and everyone be safe. Thank you.